selling a service. You're not selling physical therapy as a cash-based provider. You're selling, the ability to play with your kids again. You're selling the ability to get back to working out because that's what you love to do. It helps you blow off steam and you want to lose weight. That's what you're selling, right? You're not selling 5 sessions with me. They're an hour. They're 60 minutes long. We don't go a minute over, a minute less. That's not it. Value comes from the transformation that they want to achieve.
All right, welcome to another episode of Badass Clinician. Today we have Matt Shiver joining us. And again, Matt and I got connected online, just like everything else these days. We actually follow each other way longer before we actually say something to each other, but Matt shot me a DM and we kind of knew some of the same people and we just got connected, hop on a Zoom call. I think it was like half an hour, which is way too short. And after that, we're like, dude, we got to get connected. Let's chat. And then I was like, you know what? Let's get you on a podcast, man. And then let's talk about what you're doing, especially for PTs and clinicians that are looking to get online. I think it's online is something that is a real vehicle that people can actually make money and sustain living and also help a lot of people. So Matt has done it. He exited and now he's helping other people to do the same thing. So Matt, welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm stoked. Like you said, our conversation was way too short. We were like, I'm going to go, man. But like, we were just getting into the meat of it. And I was like, man, we should totally record this conversation. And now we're here.
So can you tell listeners a little bit about you?
Like you said, like now my main role has been helping coaches and clinicians create online offers, but I've been in the space since like 2015. I did a bodybuilding show. I've been in the like strength and conditioning world for a while. I did a bodybuilding show in 2015 after I graduated undergrad. And right after that, I was like, I can help people get fit. So I started giving them like daily programming, workouts, nutrition, right before I started PT school. So I started PT school in 2016, but 2015, I had like a semester gap. So I started getting in this online space, helping people. And while I was in PT school, I had this little side hustle on the side where I was coaching people one-on-one with their health, wellness, nutrition, stuff like that. I just remember like in like peds or in neuro, and I wasn't like super excited. I was just sitting behind my computer, like programming and like talking to clients and stuff like that. And yeah, so I continued doing that all throughout PT school. I had a few different like strength and conditioning gigs. I was working at a CrossFit gym. I had some like competitive Olympic weightlifting coaching clients that I was working with. And yeah, I just kept myself busy, man. And with that, I realized that, when I graduated, I wanted to keep doing this. I loved, the flexibility. And at the time I was probably like making enough to cover my rent, like in PT school and maybe like some groceries, but it wasn't like anything substantial. But I saw the trajectory of, man, you're telling me I could work with like, 30 to 40 people total max on a roster that's relatively like recurring, and I could be making 10K plus. So I was like, this is pretty interesting. So I knew that in PT school. So when I graduated, I reached out to a cash-based practitioner, and we partnered on another venture that allowed me to go online and also do some cash pay on the side. So big picture, I graduated, was still doing the online stuff, grew more online businesses, and slowly transitioned from like 3 days a week in clinic to 1 day a week, to where I just got so much excitement and fulfillment doing the online venture and the online coaching offers that I went full-time in that in just like a year and a half after graduating, honestly. And I've been in the space ever since.
How many people, especially your peers, your classmates, think you were nuts for doing that?
Dude, so many, man. Because I remember like, because it was before graduation, I went to Duke for physical therapy school, and we had like 2 years of
great school.
Yeah, great school. 2 years of in the classroom, and then third year clinical rotations. So like in the third year, when I was out and about, was when I was doing these networking, when I was like lining up this gig and this new adventure I was going to start. And I remember coming back like after all that was over, and we all met and had like a big weekend party before graduation. And I told everybody, I was like, yeah, I'm going to work like, probably 3 days a week, and then the rest of it's going to be online. But my real focus is growing an online like coaching company. And they're like, dude, you just, don't you feel like you should like utilize your skills and like learn your skills and all this stuff? I'm like, man, one thing I don't think they'll realize is that in PT school, you learn so much about problem solving. Like I had such a good like mindset around like, all right, low hanging fruit, problem solving. And when I started getting into the coaching, online coaching, even like the business space, marketing, sales, systems, I could apply that same skill set that I learned in PT school to that. And I just loved that side of it. So, I was following definitely my passion and my heart to jump into this. And yeah, I got a lot of pushback though, like classmates, like I don't think my teachers got it. Nobody really got it.
No one's, yeah.
Except for clinicians who are already out there. Clinicians who are already doing the thing, they got it. They're like, oh, that's smart, because they experienced the burnout, they experienced those things ahead of time. But it was people who weren't actively practicing that didn't get it.
I was doing the same thing. My PT program was on the weekend, so I was coaching CrossFit. I was programming weightlifting. I was doing competitive weightlifting, and that would just do it. Honestly, I was the strongest. I was the most fit, and I was probably like the most driven when I was in PT school. Every single minute, I was accountable for something. Whether I'm programming, I'm training, I'm coaching, or I'm studying. Like, it gave me such a good structure that I was just an animal. Like, looking back, I was like, that was the hardest time, but it's also the funnest time of my life. There's a part of us, like you and I, or a lot of people listen to this, who always into movement, have coached people, know how people get stronger. And with all this knowledge we gained from PT school, it's almost like we kind of knew it before, but by going to PT school, it's confirmed they actually know what the hell you're talking about. And it's almost like a stamp of approval that you needed to say, you know what? I actually know what the hell I'm talking about.
100%, man. 100%. I mean, I too worked in a CrossFit gym as a weightlifting coach. And that was an incredible place. There was me and like another clinician who was a year above me, or a PT student at the time, but clinician now. And we both like tag teamed and coached Olympic weightlifting together. And we just tried anything we learned in class or like stuff that we already knew with our people. So like by the time I graduated, I really had 2 years of coaching in person, like 3 days a week, experience, like people who were lifting weights and needed like just improvements in their movement patterns, or like helping them understand like how to move and pain. Like we were having these conversations all the way through. But by the time I graduated, I essentially did the same thing that I was doing, not as a PT, as a coach, within the confines I was able to do so. But then when I graduated, I was just able to have that stamp of approval of being like, yeah, like what I said in the gym, all that stuff is still the same. It's just, it's official now.
And doing online coaching, like when I was doing online programming for all my weightlifters, like we use Excel. This is before like Train Heroic comes out. You get video, someone texts you, you use Coach's Eye to like draw feedback. Being a coach really got me to be so attentive to detail, especially being a weightlifting coach, because every single movement matters so much. And that carry over so much in how I practice in PT, especially when it comes to movement. Like my ability to see like movement frauds and like cueing got so much better that when I was practicing in the real world setting, I was like, bro, this is easy. It's so much harder online to coach people, because by the time we didn't have real world feedback then. So by the time I get the video, the lip is already done. And the next time they're going to do is 3 days from now. So now I have to say, oh, based on this, I want you to focus on this next time. And here's how I'm going to program this instead. Right. So I think there's such a massive carryover when it comes to that. So like, was your experience the same? And that's how you're able to like kind of scale your business online?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was part of the coaching, one of the ventures that I had. So I was like in PT school, I was coaching at a CrossFit gym. I was doing some personal training at Duke's like personal training gym area. And then I also I was a part of a Travis Mash, one of his weightlifting coaches.
Oh yeah, the Mash Mafia.
Yeah, so I was one of his coaches. So every day, like we had an assigned or not every day, but a few times a week, we had an assigned day that we were responsible for anyone that posted a video that we had to give feedback to and give them like feedback on it. So by the time like I was done practicing or like started practicing, I had seen thousands of people snatch, clean and jerk, squat, pull, like all the things that I could have possibly like known how to do. And while it can be harder online, it makes you have to be more simplistic. You have to be so simple. You can't be like, here, let me show you what it should feel like. And like grab a bar and like pull it in and like kind of like change their positioning like in real time. You have to be so good with your language and like specific and simple online, because they could ask a follow-up question kind of, but not really like where it's live in person. So you have to get better at communication.
Obviously you took it at scale to build your online business, right? Let's talk about that. So how do you grow it so big, and how do you deliver it to the mass end, and who was it for? That program.
Yeah. So the first business venture that I got involved in when I finished PT school was called Effective Fitness, and they're still around. They're doing awesome. It was a great group to be a part of, and it helped first responders with their health and wellness. So that was it still is it's a lower ticket membership. So lower ticket, lower touch type of solution. And that was one of the most fun businesses to be a part of, because it was very like, unlike weightlifting coaching or even CrossFit coaching. And that's actually the type of coaching that I help most people do now, because it's a different skill set and it's a easier model to build. But the model that I got involved in right after school was more of a lower ticket model, where it was like anywhere from $20 to $30 a month, with like a 14-day free trial to get people involved, all that stuff. And since then, I've helped probably 2 to 4 other companies with that model. But I got to be honest, like it's a much harder model to master, as opposed to the more mid to higher ticket, where it's like, anywhere from $350 to $1,000 a month type of offer, because you just need less people. With the low ticket, low touch program, you could have one coach or one person fulfilling on 500 to 1,000 athletes or people in that container. But it's not, we're not giving video feedback for that. It's $25. You just kind of do it on your own. And that model works well for people who already have like big audiences, but it's really tough for like clinicians and coaches who, hey, I haven't started social media. I'm going to go start social media. I'm going to start a $50 program or $20 program. It's going to take you years to build that to a place where it's truly profitable. But if I, have an offer that's priced between, $1 to $5K, kind of like a package like you would in a cash-based clinic, I only need like 2 to 5 people every month to make $10K. So that's typically more the model that I'd suggest most people starting with, because it's just higher profit margins, easier to get started, and doesn't take as long to hit like a revenue goal that would actually support you and your family.
And this is just like pricing psychology, right? Because most people think that to charge a certain amount, whether it's physical or online, they think they have this whole laundry list in their head that they need to have all these deliverables. I think those deliverables is what's important to the clinician or the person that's selling the thing, but it's not as important as the for the buyer, right? So like that's something I have to wrap my head around when I was raising my prices from like 60 to 150 to 250. Like now we're at 349. It doesn't matter what I want. Is what matters is like, what do they value? And all I have to go is like, hey, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you're missing? And I just deliver that value. And then from there, as long as they come in, I think the fair exchange is when people come in, especially as a service-based business, is that if someone come in and bought your product or your service in some way, if they pay $350 for it and they walk away with $500 worth of value, they're gonna be so happy. And I think that's what people missing out. They think that if you charge $350, you have to deliver $350 worth of value to them. No, you gotta go way more than that, because otherwise no one would pay, right? If you do 1-to-1 exchange, it's a fair exchange. But in a service industry, you want to be like, you want the other person to win. That's why you're there to serve them.
Totally. That's the only way that they're going to part with that investment. They're investing in themselves, they're investing in you, but it ultimately comes down to what is the transformation that you're providing, right? And I imagine you talk about that all the time, right? When it comes to like selling a service, you're not selling physical therapy as a cash-based provider. You're selling, the ability to play with your kids again. You're selling the ability to get back to working out because that's what you love to do. It helps you blow off steam and you want to lose weight. Like that's what you're selling, right? You're not selling, you're going to get 5 sessions with me. They're an hour. They're 60 minutes long. We don't go a minute over, a minute less. Like, no, that's not it. That value comes from the transformation that they want to achieve.
You sell the vacation. You don't sell the trip, right? People don't go to the Maldives and they go to Maldives because they want to have this experience that they saw on Instagram. But the time it takes to get to the Maldives is a real pain in the ass. If people were marketing that, no one would go to Maldives.
No.
A friend of mine was like, yeah, dude, it was the worst thing. Like, it's a one-time thing. I'll never do it again. I'm glad I did, but it's not a repeatable experience.
And I think we all kind of like catch ourselves. Like for me, even when I create new offers, like I find myself writing the features out and I'm like, why am I writing the features out? Like, you know what I mean? But like, it's easy because that's how we compartmentalize. Well, how are we going to deliver the value? What are the tools in my toolbox that are going to allow me to get the transformation? Like I need to know the features and I need to be able to articulate why they're important, but that's not going to be the selling point for your service offering, your coaching program, whatever it is.
And I love that, man. I want to dive into a little bit more. Obviously, you have more experience with it now. You have your own coaching, your own mentorship group to help other clinicians do the same. What was some of the negative feedback that you learned from your first venture, and how have you overcome that, and how are you improving it now?
Definitely, I'd say one of the first things is when you get started, you kind of feel like you're on your own. Like you don't really know what's right, what's wrong, even if there is a right or wrong, or like what direction you're going to. And yeah, I think for me, like first getting clarity on the direction, right? So like, where do we want this thing to be, as opposed to just doing because we're supposed to build it, so we're just going to build it. Like I've talked to a lot of clinicians like that who even have their own cash-based practice. I'm like, cool, where do you want us to go? Like, oh, I want to make this amount. I'm like, why? Because everybody else is doing it. So like for me, like when I first started my first venture, I was totally just like, I was in this place of I just got to pay my bills. So I just kept building, and then once my bills were paid for, it's like I kept building, but there wasn't like a in direction in sight, or even like having a direction, one for myself, and then two for a team, right? So like if you have partners, or if you even have team members, like having everybody on board to the direction where you want to go is extremely important. And I think that's one thing I just didn't think about. I was like, oh yeah, goal setting, blah, 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 like mission, vision, value, oh, whatever. Like, but now I'm like, I get it. And it's more important than I thought it was when I started.
Dude, I can definitely agree with you on that, especially the goal setting, the mission, the vision, the core value, and all of that stuff. Just because in the beginning, for me, I was in survival mode. Like I just need to make ends meet. I just got to make sure bills are paid. And that's the last thing I can care about. And, I learned this from just listening to Joe Rogan, where he had someone on as a guest that survived North Korea. And then Joe Rogan was like, oh, what do you think about art? What do you guys do for creativity? She was like, Joe, we're just trying to find the next meal. When you're hungry, you don't give a crap about what's music is like, what's art is like, what's culture is like, right? I mean, like if you look at like Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? You only reach self-actualization once all those things are met. If those things are not met, there's no way you can think about mission, vision, what are you doing it for, and all of that stuff. So I think for the people who are listening, please do not feel guilty, because it's been so demonized as business owner, right? All these books are out there. It's all like kind of foo-foo, feel good, make you feel like almost like you need to be a non-profit business and you need to give away the farm in order for you to be a good CEO. The way I argue is that you will become a good CEO by the amount of mistake that you make, and how the amount of people that you actually help, and the amount of people that you have grown in your company, right? By call a tight ship and keep really good, high standard and high core value. All the books that come out, like they commercialize everything. They commercialize purpose now. If you don't have purpose, you feel like crap, right? If you're not happy, you feel like crap. Like everything is either, if you're not fit, then you feel like crap. If you're too fat, you feel like crap. Like everything's just commercialized. And again, that's why capitalism is beautiful, but there's a downside to that. Another touch point I want to really add into is that when you touch on, when people start working with you, you're like, oh, why do you want to make this much money and this and that? And my mentor, Dan Kennedy, talked about this. This is a concept like the thermostat, where when people start focusing on number of how much they want to make, rather than the amount of impact they want to give and what change they want to do, how many people they want to help. Let's say you have someone that wants to make 100K a year. Those people will have that thermostat set at 100K, and they will only behave as if they're only making 100K a year. So as soon as they're about to go over 100K, they start self-sabotaging it subconsciously because they know they can do more. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I better get rid of number, like in some way, right? I have a big number, but to hit the big number, the small numbers is in the way. So I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
Yeah, no, I totally do. And that's the reason we start with typically the number is for the reason why. It's like, okay, if you want to hit 100K a year, why is that? What is that going to do for you? Which it could be, hey, that allows me to pay my bills, and that's my first goal. Okay, cool. And then once we get close to that, let's set a new 90-day goal. Like every 90, I like to do goals every 90 days, and we set objective, but only if it supports our like reason why, right? So if we set this like big goal of I want to achieve $1 million, okay, but Why? Is that going to add more stress to your life, like in a positive way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is that going to benefit you and the impact that you want to have? You might be able to still have a similar level of impact without having more overhead, more employees, more all these things. Because as your business grows and revenue that you're going to accumulate, like you're going to have more expenses unless you have a super low ticket, low touch model, which it may not, I'll be honest, it's probably not going to provide the same level of impact as something where people invest themselves more.
I'm a big fan of going against the grain with low ticket, low touch model at all, because I think everything, if you're going to spend enough time and you want to be creative and you want to perform at the highest level, you got to go high ticket, high touch point, and that way you kind of put a lot of pressure on yourself, right? And the people who are consuming your stuff and investing in your stuff, they have way more high, they have a higher buy-in, so there will be more compliance to make sure that they get the result that they pay for.
Totally. I've seen in some of the models and business I've been a part of where we have that lower ticket just across the board, even those that log in to do their workouts and stuff, like you'll see logins of like 20 to 30% just logging into the app. So it's like, cool, like you could have a business that's doing 100K a month at that price point, but of the people who are actually paying you, less than a quarter are actually using your services, which is like, probably doesn't feel good from like an impact and a business owner standpoint. You're like, man, these people don't. But even people who are doing high ticket, like you're going to see a much higher compliance and an investment of actually doing the thing that you put out there, because there's some pain involved, right? Like if I'm investing a couple $1,000s of my money, like and let's say that's a substantial amount for me, I'm more likely to do the thing because it's important to me. I invested into it. I invested into myself. Where like with a $20 to $50 model, maybe that's a lot for some people. Like I have seen some people where this is a lot, but for most of us, like that's less than a meal out. So like, why would I value that?
It's kind of like Planet Fitness model. That's exactly what it is. They
bank on people not coming, because if everyone came, they couldn't serve the amount of people all at one time. Like it'd be impossible, right? But it's like, we imagine probably 5%, maybe less, are going to actually do the thing. So we do have the space and the gym floors to make that happen.
Yeah. I like to ask like a lot of downside questions, because obviously we want to educate people, and I'm also curious too. So obviously you see high burned out in PT, right? And that's why people look for a new vehicle. Like, hey, if I go online, I'm probably not going to get burned out. I have more ownership of who I see, but they also think it's easier. But you and I know if we're going to do anything and you want to do it well, it's actually, there's a learning curve to it, right? So what are some downside when you first started? Let's say if you were to give advice to someone that's super green, come out PT school, maybe a 2016 version of Matt Shiver, be like, hey man, I'm ready. I read about this online thing. I think I'm going to do it. What would you say? So that way that person can go into with a realistic expectation and kind of beef up their armor a little bit. So that way it can soften the blow.
Yeah. Such a good question, man. I ultimately, yes, it will take time, but two is when you get started, it's going to be the most grunt work. So like when you're getting started, it can feel the most heavy. It can feel like it's really hard. It can feel like no one's listening and no one's watching. And that is part of the phase of starting any business. Is like, all right, I started this thing. Oh, people come. And when you're getting started, you have to do a lot more outreach. You have to network with a lot of people. And that may involve, if you have no following, you may have to send some cold DMs. You may have to connect with people and just provide value. You're going to do a lot more giving the first 6 to 12 months of starting a business before you're at the place where you're able to really provide for yourself. Like you will get there. You just have to know that like getting started for that first 1 to 3 months, you're going to be grinding. You're going to be doing things that are uncomfortable. Outreach can be uncomfortable. It is a very scalable way to book more calls, and it does work. It can be uncomfortable at first because you're like, I'm putting myself out there. I'm telling this person I can help them. And they're like, I think I can help them too. Like you may not even have the skill because you haven't worked with enough people to feel confident in your outreach and in your delivery and in your content creation. So that first little bit, as you're learning of how do I deliver this and how do I grow this, it can feel uncomfortable, and you may experience like what some people call like some sort of imposter syndrome, and it's not that you're an imposter, it's just you're still unsure of what's my fulfillment process like. I think it's this way, and you're like, you do it enough times and you actually get results, you're like, no, it is this way. But that takes time to figure out that process. And then what's my growth system? How do I acquire clients? That takes time. So I'd say just like be ready for those feelings of, oh, is this working? I don't know. Am I getting results? Am I not? I don't know. Like, that's part of the process. And I made a post yesterday. It was like, whenever you start, it was talking about offer creation and just like your skills. So it's like, when you start anything, you're going to suck at it. And then you keep doing it enough times, you're going to suck so little that you actually become good at it. But it all comes down to like, well, how do I get started? And it's just taking that action. So it's going to be uncomfortable for the first 3 months. There's no doubt. Yeah. But if you're consistent with it, it will turn around.
I think for the people who are listening, obviously you guys are thinking about starting a clinic or have your own clinic or looking to start a new venture. Like, it's going to suck regardless, whether you're in person or you're online. You just have to get used to just rejection after rejection after rejection, right? The way I looked at it is like, imagine if I was a baby, I started to walk and I keep falling and my mom's like, you know what? Stop. Don't try to walk anymore. Could you just keep falling? Let's just stick to crawling. Like, where would I be? Another analogy I like to use is like, imagine you plant a seed. You're watering the plant. The next day you come out, there's no plant. And you just throw the whole thing out. The most beautiful thing I heard is like, you don't plant a tree for you plant a tree for the future generation. The way I look at it is like, you plant it for the future you, right? Good things take time, always. And what I love to, man, is, and this is just me interact, and this, I promise you guys, our second time talking, and like just talking to him, I want to assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you're probably pretty introverted to begin with, and you have to kind of create a persona for yourself to be online. And what I appreciate doing is you're so vulnerable online, and because we follow each other, and I always like your video, I always like watch from afar, your message, your delivery gets so much better the more you do it. And in the beginning, I can tell you were just like super awkward, same as me, because like I'm super conscious about like my English, right? And talk about that, because most people, the biggest hurdle is putting themselves out there. So how do you overcome that?
Dude, fire. Oh man, I appreciate that. What a great reflection, because yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt so uncomfortable to get started. So to kind of like rewind. So when I first got out of PT school and was doing a lot of the coaching and even some of the partnerships, I'm typically the behind the scenes guy. So like, I'm the systems guy. I like building stuff. I like building systems. I like building campaigns. I like building strategies. I was never the face of anything. So, and as I continue to grow, I was like, man, you know, I'm helping all these other businesses grow, but the fulfillment's off, or there's something off. And I was like, I just want control of it. You know, like, I just want to give you control of it. So for me to do that, it was like, okay, well, I have to be the face. I have to be the attractive personality. And for like a lot of the demographic, it's like, I have to be the clinician that went online, because that is a big part of my marketing, especially like the paid side. It's like, I have to be the attractive clinician that has gone from what it felt like to be in clinic and now goes online. Well, I have to showcase that. So I need to be the person who's going to speak and share my experience, share what I've learned, etc. So for me to do that, I need to come on, turn the camera on. I need to turn the camera on, start talking, start providing value. And yeah, man, like, but what I did is I invested in myself. Like, I decided I want to do it, and I found a coach. I found a video coach, someone who like legit can just help me talk to camera and gave me prompts. And I gotta be honest, like, the service was okay, but I invested a substantial portion of my money to get coaching from him. And that investment, the moment I paid him, I started creating. I was like, I've already committed to myself. Like, I kept pushing the calls back. I was like, I don't really need you anymore. Like, I'm good. Like, this is super helpful. But like, by taking the action of investing in myself was the best thing I did. So as immediately after I made that investment, I started, I did one session with him, and then he gave me some prompts. I started filming the prompts like once a week or once every other week. And I just made it a habit of like, okay, cool. This is what I'm going to do now. And the first 90 days and all the content that I made, and most of it you can see on my page, was just me talking straight to camera. So being super vulnerable, sharing my experience, sharing knowledge, all of that. Before that, I was doing maybe some just like images and some like vulnerable text and copy, but it's not the same as like turning your camera on and talking straight to camera. Like there's something about that. You're like, oh, this is me. So yeah, for the first 90 days of doing it, man, I would post and I would just like, refresh. Did anyone like this? Like, is this getting any reach? Is anybody watching this? And I was so like, oh man, this post sucked. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to turn it off. Like, like I felt so emotional, but just like anything of like we talked about, in the first 90 days of you starting a business, it's going to suck. It's similar. Like the first 90 days of me posting content, I felt all the emotions and was like super attached to my phone and felt, if I got a lot of likes, I was accepted. If I didn't get a lot of likes, I was rejected. And it took me at least 90 days of doing it, posting every single day, for me to realize it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters for my business to post so I can continue to get leads, but the reactions, the engagement, the views, the likes, the comments, none of that mattered. What mattered was I'm showing up every day because I have a message for my ideal demographic that I can help them. And to become that attractive person to help me, like with my mission and with my vision, I've got to show up. So regardless of the amount of likes, engagement, I'm going to be consistent and continue to show up. And after about 90 days, again, after that part period, it sucked, is when I started getting inbound leads. People started reaching out, but it took me 90 days, and it wasn't a lot, but it was like, it took me 90 days for me to probably get 2 or 3 people messaging me a week. Hey dude, what do you do? And now I kept doing that for another, it's probably been about, maybe in total 8 months of me doing it consistently. Like I'm still really early on into actually like face the camera, doing all the sharing, but I'm getting a lot more leads. Like it's doubled or tripled the amount of inbound leads I've gotten like since the initial 30 days. And like my calendar is full with calls, and almost all of it right now is coming from organic content of showing up. Even though my content still doesn't get thousands of views or thousands of likes, which doesn't really matter, people are coming out of the woodworks. Dude, been following you for a while. Love your content. I would love to work with you. Tell me what you do. And I was like, oh, cool, this works.
I love that, man, so much, just because I feel like we had so many similarities in so many different ways. And I think the first thing is learning to be detached on the outcome and not needing approval for what is it that you do. I think that's a big thing. I was the same way when I was posting. I was like, so like, I think you and I talk about like, I came back from like Russell Brunson Inner Circle, and I was like, I got to post every day. So I made a commitment to like, hey, 2 reels a day, whatever it is, I'm just going to post. And like you, I was on the phone scrolling. I'm like, oh shit, is this this? Is this bad? Oh, there's typo on that. I look like an idiot, this and that. And then after that, I'm just like, it's just every day. It's almost like I count my macros every day, right? In the beginning it sucks because I have to do it, but then now it's just a normal thing. And just like I would read the Bible every day, it's just a normal thing that I do, right? It just become part of my routine, and I no longer feel attached to it. Like my day is not good or bad based on the outcome that I'm receiving on social media. I think it's going back to define your own version of the matrix of success, right? What is this success for you? Like for you and I, it's like just showing up and just doing the content, putting out message out there, trying to help people. I think that's the main thing, is like all the content I put out, I always look at like, if I were a younger clinician, if I were a 4-year-ago version of myself, would I appreciate this kind of message? If the answer is yes, great. I think that's good. Right? If people end up to share it, save it, even better, right? That content means something. Could I do more about that? Probably. I could do more. There's so much truth and resiliency that comes about with showing up every single day, because the people that didn't make it, that don't make it at all, are the people who quit so early. And the fact that I had a podcast I started during the pandemic for Myokinetics, and it's still going. I just recorded 2 today. Like I'm already successful than 90% of the podcasts that started during the pandemic because they all quit. Yeah. Like my rule of thumb is that like people was like, oh, you're not as competitive anymore. I was like, I am, but all I have to do is outlive my enemy and I'll win.
Dude, that's such a good way of looking at it. That reminds me of something that Alex Ramosi said. Yeah, it's like, it's great to be like somebody, oh man, look at the growth, like an overnight success. But most of the time, like those overnight successes, either they've been doing it for a really long time and you don't know that, or they shoot up and they shoot back down. And it's like you said, like what is success? Is success, how fast can I get to $1 million? Like, okay, that's a level, but like, can you get to $1 million and sustain it? Can you get to $1 million and be able to travel, enjoy your life, like spend time with your kids and family, as opposed to like, I got there with a bunch of VAs and, I'm just, just being scrappy. Like, okay, but how does that improve your quality of life? Does it improve your quality of life? Is that sustainable?
Yeah. I think the main message is like, pick a game that you can play for a long time. I think that's been a huge thing, and find a good fulfillment into it. Another thing that I love too is that you made this post, and I think if you guys haven't followed him, definitely follow him. Go back to this post when he listed the total amount that you have invested in coaching, right? Is you pay to show up for someone to show up. And you and I talk about how I joined Russell Brunson Inner Circle, which cost me $50,000. And you're like, dude, tell me more about that. And for me, it was like, I paid to make a commitment to show up, to talk to people, to put myself out there. It's the first mastermind group I pay for that's super high ticket, and also like it has a huge qualifier to get in. So not many people get in, you have to apply. And for me, it was a non-PT related mastermind I've joined for the first time. So it's exposed me in so many levels, dude. But as soon as I show up the first day, I made a commitment. I post every day. I met people that keep me accountable, and the network that I have is so much better now. And I'm thankful for it, because if I didn't pay for it, it was free, I wouldn't take any action at all. And one thing I want to give you props on is I remember you do a post of drop this emoji if you want me to reach out to you. And I think like maybe 1 or 2 people did, or no one did. But then the next week you do exact same thing. So I was like, yo, I like this guy, man. He just keeps showing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's 2 parts to that. Yeah, I mean, like the investment part, man, that was one of the first things I did. I was working part-time, and at the time I didn't have ownership in a company. I was kind of working contractor 2 spots, and that was one of the first things that I did was I was like, I need help. Like I don't know what to do. And I got on the phone with somebody, and then their coaching package was, it was $2,000 a month. And that was like all the money I was making from the online business at the time. It was like $2,000 a month. And I was like, it's like, that's all the money I have in my account. Like, I had enough to pay for like my living expenses, but it was the living expenses and then that. And it was like, well, 100% of this is just gonna go to this coaching. I really hope something happens from this, But again, even when I mentioned the content, when I invested, and that was the content itself, that coaching was $5,000. It was $5,000 for 3 months of coaching. And I jumped into that, and it dramatically made me take action, because at the time, like $5,000 was a big enough commitment for me to take action. If I were to pay $1,000 even today, like I probably wouldn't do it enough for me. Like I need something for me now. My threshold is closer to the 5 to even like $10,000 mark. Like if I invest that, I'm going to do it. But if I'm even paying $1,000 or less, like it's just not a big enough for me to do it. But straight out of school, within the first year, I committed to a 12-month commitment at $2,000 a month. And I was terrified to tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone for like 6 months. I was just like, my head was down. I didn't make any posts about it. I didn't share with my business partners. I was so scared of how they would perceive me for investing in myself, which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
But that was the first commitment I made. So that was a 12. I stayed with him for about 14 months. So it's like 28, almost $30,000, like right out of school, when I still have student debt to pay. But when I did that, like, man, the growth that I experienced personally, but also business-wise, the business, like or not even the business, I would say my personal income probably 10x'd over that year time of being in that mastermind group. So I'm like, oh, I see the value here. But you don't know what the value is when you're getting into those situations. You just know that, okay, there's something on the other side that's attractive. It's pulling me in. I don't know what it is, but oftentimes it's just like, it's that feeling of intuition of like, all right, this feels really good and aligned. I'm taking this thing, and trusting yourself and the process that it's going to get you there.
For me, I pay for perspective now. I just pay to expand my thinking and the way I see things. So that way I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can make this decision comfortably, because I have pretty much almost all the views and all the knowledge to make this kind of decision. And if I made a mistake, oh well, that's another good lesson to learn. Every investment I made that's on myself, I can easily say I 10x, 20x it every single time. Like every time I bet on myself, I always win. I feel like I'm the house, right? Like I'm Vegas at this point.
Dude, that's awesome.
One thing I want to touch on, man, you mentioned that you had partners in the past. I want to talk about that, because I got a lot of email and questions about that. Should I start a business with someone? Should I get a partnership? What's upside and downside? And for me, I'm anti that, because I operate in the sphere where I'm okay taking 100% ownership of all the fault. And I like to make decisions based on speed. So you've been through it. Can you just give us the upside, the downside, so people can make good informed decision?
Yeah. So there's definitely both sides to it. I think when you're getting started though, it's definitely, I would suggest being the only owner. Like definitely when you're getting started, new to business and you don't really know exactly what you're creating. I've been a part of a lot. I'm still part of some. Like I still have some of my clients that I'll eventually partner with, and I'll get like equity in their companies and help them grow. Like that is something I've done in the past. But I get a minority share, and I know that I'm not a decision maker. So I go into it knowing that I'm not a decision maker, and that's okay. It's kind of like when you watch the Shark Tank, right? Like those guys are getting 5 to 10% or maybe 20% of the business, and they know that they're not going to be the ones who are doing the work, right? So like they're going to give high level strategy, They're going to invest capital. They might invest use their network to grow it. That's cool, but they're not the doers. If you're going to be an operator of a business where this is your main focus, it can become really challenging to have business partners unless you guys are 100% aligned. But even then, it's going to change. You're going to change as a person. If in 3 years, 2 years, even a year, your goals are going to change, and that's going to impact the business. The only exception to this would be if you're very seasoned in business. Let's say, for example, you want to partner with somebody who has an audience, right? Somebody has a big social media following. They've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and you have a skill set. You can give them a minority share, if you're going to be the operator, a minority share of your business, and they're going to send you traffic. You can do it, and you can do it successfully. It's just be really careful, get really clear on how is this person going to contribute, and is it worth an equity stake in a company? I think it can be for some people, but I think most people just want to go into business with their friends really fast without really thinking about it, and it's not the best move. I would not recommend it until you've grown a company to at least 7 figures at least once already. Go and you have an idea of how business works. Okay, but if you're brand new and you've never made you haven't got to 6 figures yet, I would not recommend partnering with somebody. It just doesn't make sense. You don't have business knowledge. You don't really even know what you're doing. That it just doesn't make sense.
You pretty much just been echoing what I've been saying. I think the way I said it was, it's hard to make good business decision when both people are lost, right? If you have two people who are on the same thing, there's nothing else to offer. You're just good at one thing, the other person's good at another thing, and you have to have a clear, defined outcome and clear boundaries of who does what. You got to go in as a prenup. And, the one mistake I made was hiring a friend out of PT school, and that didn't end out well at all. And to me, I regret that. I would not make that decision from the beginning at all. Right. And I think going into something like this, it's really good to kind of, you need a lot of dating phase to figure out you have a aligned value or not. And another thing is that in the beginning, especially when you're a young clinician looking to start a business, money's a big driver. So it's not mission. It's money driven, but not mission driven. So therefore, when you start making a lot of money, it will split people apart, right? That's why most people who hit the lotto end up being broke within the next 4 years, just because everyone just pulled them apart, come after it. But if money is not a thing, everyone that I met who has good business partnership, they don't need money. They don't need each other to be successful. They're already successful individually. They just come together to just partner to create a greater impact scale. The two examples I can make is Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. They don't need each other. They're just good together.
Yeah. Dude, that's a really good point. Because that's what I think of too. I think of even companies kind of going back to Shark Tank. It's if you've got somebody that has a distribution company and you sell e-commerce stuff, it may make sense to have a partner in that space because they already have a business. They already have a business that's successful. And it's I just want to use part of that business for my business at a discounted rate. And you have this mutual alliance. But again, both people are good. This guy's got this manufacturing company or whatever fulfillment company that's already doing really well. You ideally already have something that's doing well, and you guys can jointly create something that supports one another and allows you to have a bigger impact. But I like the analogy of dating and feeling lost because yeah, that's what it feels like.
Well, that's why the mastermind group is so important, dude. Because people need community, right? People get into partnership because they feel alone. Yeah. And that's why they say, oh, wait, now I don't have to suck by myself. I can suck with another person. And then that's what happened. That's when you start making bad decisions. The decision is based out of desperation, right? You know what it's like? There were some dark nights. You and I can bond over that. Yeah. Of how many dark nights do we have? They're oh, shit, are we going to make it? Is this a thing? How am I going to pay these people? And all of that. And investing in yourself is you find a community that people oh yeah, I've been through that. Let me help you how to get through that. I wholeheartedly believe in coaching, believe in mastermind. I wouldn't be where I am right now because of that, right? And I think that's why would you want to do it by yourself? That's always a question for me. The analogy I use is that if I know I'm going to get my ass kicked by 4 guys wearing Timbs, why would I want that? If I can pay someone to be oh, it's just 2 guys wearing regular sneakers, I'll do that. Right? The outcome is I'm just less beaten, but I'm still going to be beaten, but just not as bad.
Yeah. I've coached people before who had partnerships, wasn't legal partnerships. And once they joined a mastermind group, they realized, I don't want to work with this person. It's cool. I'm glad you guys don't have a partnership agreement. you guys need to figure out a way to to separate your ways. But you're spot on with that.
Let's talk a little bit about your group too, man. I want to hear more. Like, so what do you be doing? How are you serving your clients now? How are you helping them build their third offer and even scale their online presence?
The first step for all of that stuff is getting super clear on the offer. Like what's the problem that they're solving? And how do we articulate and message that? You can't have a sales system. You can't have a social media strategy. You can't run ads. You can't do any of that until you have a really clear, hey, this is who I help. This is how I help them. So that's like step one.
Isn't that such a hard question? I'm sure you spend a lot more time with people. People think that I want to work with these people. You ask them why 3 times, they have no answer for it.
Yeah, and I think people overlook it because if your offer is not clear, or if you don't have a good offer, if you don't have a home run, just irresistible offer, it becomes way more harder to market and sell. Mm-hmm. So if you can create something that people actually want, which a lot of times we create things because we want it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is the thing. This would be perfect. And I'm like, dude, that's a lot. Do you think people actually want that? Oftentimes you want things that are simple, right? So it's is that what people want? And is that going to actually get them the result that they want? Or is that going to get them the result that you want? Which might be different, right? So it's helping clinicians and coaches who want to go in the online space get really clear on their offer and how they articulate it so that it comes across as, oh, I get it, and I do want that, and I actually need that.
And what are some framework that you have to perhaps survey what's the market wants? Because sometimes what we want and what the markets want, what the market dictates, totally different.
Yeah, there's 2 parts to that. One is you can obviously always do market research, and market research is essentially reaching out to people and asking a couple of questions. You can typically get them on a phone call, like, hey, I've got 5 or so questions. Do you mind if I ask just kind of walk you through them so that I can get super clear on this new offer that I'm creating? I like that, but I got to be honest, the best market research you're ever going to get is on the sales calls. Because I did 20 market research calls, but then when I used all that information and tried to sell it, nobody wanted it. I'm like, okay, well, the best market research is going to be from those that have actually purchased from you. When you actually ask them for money and they say yes or no, that's your best market research. Again, I think it's good for people to get started and maybe do 5 or 10 market research calls to kind of get a picture of the offer. But ultimately, they're going to get the most amount of value by pitching their offer 20 times. You get your offer 20 times and you ask the person, okay, cool, what would make this offer a hell yeah for you? Why not? Essentially, once you get to figure out why people don't want your offer and what they do want, you're going to get a lot more yeses, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dude, the one thing I've learned is that people only focus on pricing when you haven't provided enough evidence that you can give them the result that they want. Because once you have that evidence, the pricing question goes away. There's obviously a clear thing. If they are actually financially struggling, obviously it's going to be a price objection no matter what. But if they are fit your demographic and they clearly can afford your service, the only time they focus on price, it has to do with their uncertainty, whether you can get them the outcome that they want or not. And for me, that's going back to a big marketing problem that you haven't marketed yourself hard enough or clear enough that you can serve this person wholeheartedly and get them the outcome that they deserve.
I'd say, yeah, that's a big part too. And I saw this framework of the day that I've been using, and it's confidence, their ability to have the confidence that you can get them result, and also the amount of pain that they're in too. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't really see that there's a gap, there could be a small gap that you see, but if they don't see the gap, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe they'll make it if they're 100% confident in your offer, but the gap has to be big enough of where they're at, where they want to go, which essentially is pain. When people are like, oh, pain, it's where they're at, where they want to go. And that's your job too on either in an evaluation or in a sales call, is to help them see that there is a gap that you can help them fix. So if you can help them see the gap, and like you said, the confidence, there's not a problem with the money. But if you haven't done either of those 2 things of showing, hey, I can help, and this is how I've helped X, Y, and Z, all these other people, and maybe you have a guarantee, maybe you don't, but something that's oh, this is clear. If I do this, it's going to work. He's super confident enough into it. This is what it looks like. And shoot, there is a gap. I do want this, and I feel the emotions of I need help. I want this to be solved. Dude,
it's so funny that you mentioned the gap, because I look at it as the like where they are, how ready are they to commit, and like the desired outcome, right? That's a huge gap from point A to point B. And the way I look at the gap is like it's the reason why exterminator exists, right? The exterminate business exists is when the person realizes there's a giant rat in their apartment. So the gap is a giant rat. If you don't see the rat, you're not going to call the exterminator. So sometimes you need to show that there's a rat there so that people can take action.
And oftentimes it's just helping them get clear on where they are. It's not like, like I think sometimes we think of sales, we got to like, stick a knife in there and turn it. But oftentimes it's like helping them get really clear on where they actually are. Because we can talk ourselves into, oh, we're not that bad. But then when you start asking questions like, oh, how is that affecting this? How's that affecting this? Like, oh my gosh, this actually really is affecting me. So when we think of sales and increasing quote unquote pain, it's really just helping them get clear. Like it's not our job to try to convince them or trick them. It's like help them get really clear on where they really are and where they really want to be. And if it's a good fit, then we extend that offer.
And I think that's the biggest hurdle with clinician, man, is that when you ask these prompt questions, they feel like, oh, well, I'm putting things in their head. I'm making them overthink it, this and that. But the way I look at it is like when I go get my eye exam, they always have me look at this little red barn and they say, hey, can you tell me when it's clear? And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Get them to see a clear picture of the best version of themselves. And you do that by having really, really good conversation, by active listening and asking really good question. Like, like good interviewing question, right? You're not asking to like injecting fear-based narrative in their head. Chances are, dude, they heard all this fear-based narrative before they come to you. And all you can do is like, hey, let's talk about those fear-based narrative that you have and let me demystify some of the stuff and then let's get clear on where you could be. Perhaps your goal is a little bit unrealistic, but if I bring back to where you are, maybe in the next 6 months, we can get you to this version. Would that be okay with you? Right? And that's all it is permission-based asking too.
We could do another podcast just on sales.
Oh yeah, man. It's nuts. So obviously, dude, it's been great jamming with you. I mean, it doesn't feel like a podcast. So if people are interested in obviously starting something, helping people online, like serve people at mass, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, Instagram's the easiest place. That's where I'm most responsive. So if you go to @Dr. Matt Shiver, you can find me there. Same handle for both YouTube, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Like I try to keep it all uniform. So @Dr. Matt Shiver, you can find me on most social media platforms. And then my website is mattshiver.com. That's where you can find me.
Cool, man. Listen, I appreciate this. This was an awesome hour. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of good stuff. Yeah, we definitely got to do another one, man. I think you can count on me getting Matt back on here. We can have some really good conversation.
I love that. I mean, I just want to commend you, man. You are a great question asker. And even like, I love where you're like, what are some cons of this? And I'm like, dude, because there's cons of everything. So I just want to appreciate you acknowledge you for being a good interviewer. And I feel very seen and heard. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. I learned so much. So guys, please go check him out. Go support him. Obviously, he can help you. If this is a path you're going now, just drop a DM, ask him some question. And then that's it.